I'm going to call the meeting to order at 2:02, and rather than doing roll call, because we are having a joint meeting of the Economic Development Committee and the Housing Committee, I'm just going to call you out by name, how I see you on my Zoom squares, and I'd just like you to say, introduce yourself and say where you're from and whether you're with the Housing Committee, the Economic Development Committee, or whether you are a friend that is just visiting, and welcome. So I'm Eliza Lopresti with the Rivercog. Bonnie, I see you next.
Yes, hi, I'm Bonnie Bennett. I'm an alternate to the River Cog from Chester.
Thank you. Megan?
Hi, everyone. Megan Juflis, Deputy Director, Rivercog.
Sheila? I see Sheila McKinley Bell, and I think she is with the Economic Development Committee. Michael F. I'm guessing since he unmuted and we can't hear him, that's Michael Fogliano, formerly of the Housing Committee, friend of the Housing Committee. Kim Hardy?
Do I need to say something?
I wanted you to say where you're from, although you are descriptive in your in your name there from Hope Partnership.
Hello.
Hello. Daniel Smith?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Deep River Planning and Zoning and a member of the Housing Committee.
Thank you. Eric?
First Selectman in Killingworth and alternate to the Housing Committee.
Merrick? Oh, Merrick, we can't hear you. That's Merrick Kazakowski. He's on the Housing Committee from Middletown. John? G?
Yeah, John Guskowski with Tyke Planning and Policy Group. I suppose I'll consider myself a friend to the committee. I don't know if everyone would agree, but let's say it. Let's go with that.
We consider you a friend.
Michael Pelton?
First Selectman Portland and friend of the committee.
Hello. Ben?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Lovejoy, project manager with the Department of Housing, and I would say friend of the committee as well.
Abby?
Abby Pearsall, I'm the Clinton Town Planner, and I'm on the committee.
Carrie?
Carrie Duquesne, land use official for the town of Essex, member of the Housing Committee.
Andrea?
Hi, I'm Andrea Webster. I'm a social services coordinator for East Haddam Youth and Family Services. And I guess I'm a friend of the committee.
Chris?
Is that Chris?
Yep, that's you.
Good afternoon, Chris Camberry, Middlesex Chamber, and I am on the Economic Development Committee.
Julie Way?
Sorry, Julie Way, Congressman Courtney's office, and one of the issues I handle is housing in our office.
Thanks for joining us. Eric Salmon?
Very welcome.
Yes, Eric Salmon, CEO for Town of Westbrook, and yep, friend.
Oh, you're on the committee of the housing.
Exactly.
Jennifer Donahue?
Hi, I'm the Economic Development Director for the town of Old Saybrook, and I'm part of the Regional Economic Development Commission.
Welcome. Brendan?
Hi, everybody. I'm the transit planner for both River Light Transit and Rivercog.
Tom, St. Louis?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm the third selectman town of
Kevin, whose name says Sam Gold?
Kevin Armstrong, GIS planner at Rivercog.
Tom Pinkowicz?
Hi, Tom Pinkowicz. I'm with Essex.
Juliet?
Juliet Hodge, planner with East Hampton.
Thank you. Dee Arnold, I think that's Diane. Arnold?
Yeah, Diane, I'm here. Diane Arnold. I'm on the Economic Development Commission.
From what town, Diane? Sorry.
Sorry, Essex.
Thank you. And Janice Atkinson? Janice is muted. She's a friend of the committee from Essex. Stacy Danello?
Stacy Danello, Economic Development, Deep River.
Thank you. Oh boy, everybody's getting out of order. Marcos.
Hey, good afternoon, Marcos Gonzalez. I am staff at Rivercog.
Andrew Armstrong? Andrew is new town planner from Cromwell, joining the housing committee. Thank you so much. Carla?
Carla Lindquist, Hope Partnership. We like to go to the housing committee meetings to provide some housing perspective.
And Jennifer Miller.
Hi, Jennifer Miller, Old Lyme Affordable Housing Commission.
Okay, Susie Beckman, and I think you're the last one.
I'm it. Susie Beckman, Regional Planner here at Rivercog.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I thought we were going to have a couple more new people that were on the housing committee, but they have not appeared. So we did discuss in December keeping our meetings to an hour. So I'm going to move this along pretty quickly. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the new housing law, the PA25-1. And Megan and I can talk about this, but I'm going to turn this over to Megan at this point, and we'll just have a conversation.
Great. Thanks, Eliza. I have a little presentation. I know some of you were at the RPC and a lot of you were also at the CCAPA event, so a lot of this information is not going to be new. However, I think repetition is good, and we're going to pay particular focus to the housing growth plans today. The other thing I will say, we have on the agenda, we are going to talk about the summary document that's being put out by the COGS. It is officially out of my hands. The content is complete. It is being designed right now. So to the best of my knowledge, we expect to have it by the end of the day tomorrow. We will send that out to all of you as soon as we have it in hand. And we will be setting up a forum for taking questions at that time as well on that document. But we're very excited. It's been, I want to say a labor of love, but not always. But we are very excited to get it out to all of you. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. And I want this one. All right. Are you seeing the presentation?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So we have on the slide current as of yesterday. This is a riff on the presentation that I gave to the RPC last night, but we put the current as of date on there because as we get more information and clarification, sometimes this changes. So this is our current understanding of how things stand. And we broke down in our analysis, and you'll see this also in the summary document when it goes out, the sections of the bill or public act now into zoning changes, which are the kind of mandatory short-term things that you have to do, the housing growth plans, and some optional provisions like the transit-oriented communities and the priority housing development zones, and then sort of a miscellaneous potpourri of things that you might be interested in. But for the purposes of this meeting, as I said, we're going to really focus just on housing growth plans. There are multiple mandatory deadlines. I should start by saying that the Act has repealed 830J, so there are no more 830J plans. We've talked about this before, but now 830J plans are being replaced with the housing growth plans. There are several deadlines to be aware of. The first is for the state and the regional housing growth targets. Those are in Section 7 of the Act, and they will be coming out December 1st, 2026. That's coming from OPM. Then the second date you have to be aware of, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment and the Municipal Affordable Housing Goals. Those are also in Section 7, and the date for that is June 1st, 2027, and that will be coming from us, and particularly this group. Then the last one is the Municipal and Regional Housing Growth Plans, which are in Sections 5 and 6 respectively, and those will be due for our region July 1st, 2028. We are in the first bucket of plans that will be due. So we'll talk a little bit about each of those and what we can expect. For the state and regional housing growth targets, as I said, that lives in Section 7 of the Act. OPM with Department of Housing, DECD, and the COGS will be evaluating the need for housing over the next 10-year period. The need is going to be based on multiple factors that are including but not limited to these that are set out in the Act: housing replacement needs, availability of affordable and deeply affordable housing, number of household formations, population and demographic changes, and measure of housing cost burden. And the evaluation is going to inform the housing growth targets for the state and for each planning region. So we will expect to receive a target as part of this process. Then from there, the COGS are going to develop a regional housing needs assessment that establishes a recommended affordable housing goal for each municipality in the region, again, over the next 10 years. The regional housing needs assessment methodology is, at least in part, set out in the Act. There is some room so long as it includes these things. So it must be designed with due consideration for the duty of the state and the municipality to affirmatively further fair housing, must rely on appropriate regional metrics of need to ensure adequate housing options, including but not limited to number of households at or below 30% area median income, with housing costs at or above 50%, so cost-burdened households, overcrowding and other cost-burden indicators using the CHAS data or similar, using appropriate factors for fairly allocating need, and that terminology should be familiar to this group, among the municipalities, including but not limited to proximity to public transportation, significant employment opportunities, and downtown areas, the availability of developable land, which is defined, and we can talk about that in a minute, and the share of multifamily housing stock. And then we can also apply adjustments so that the recommended affordable housing goal for the municipality will increase relative to the other municipalities in the same planning region if they have higher equalized net grand list per capita, higher median income, lower percentage of population below the federal poverty threshold, or lower percentage of population living in multifamily housing. There is a caveat also: no recommended goal shall exceed 20% of the occupied dwelling units in the municipality. So there is a cap. There is a review and approval process for the needs assessment and the goals. So the COGS have to submit the needs assessment and the goals to the Secretary of OPM. The COGS have to publish the goal for each municipality on the website, including input and assumptions and data sources. And then the COG has to provide notice of the goals to each municipality. Getting into the meat of what has to go into the plan. So we haven't even touched the actual housing growth plans yet at this point. If you recall from the dates, all of this, the publishing of goals, that will all be 2027. So from 2027 to 2028, we'll be working on our housing growth plans, and we'll start with the municipal housing growth plans. The requirements for municipal housing growth plans are in Section 5. Municipalities have to create and adopt a municipal housing growth plan or participate in and adopt a regional housing growth plan by the initial deadline and every 5 years thereafter. Our current understanding is the goals are set at 10 years, but because we have 5-year intervals for plans, we can either break up that goal over 2 5-year periods, or we can use the first 5-year plan as a check-in to see where we're at on our goals. So the decision of whether or not you're going to opt into the regional housing growth plan has to be made within 30 days from when we publish the goals. Municipalities that don't opt in have to create their own municipal housing growth plan. Before they do that, they have to also adopt an affordable housing goal. The goal can be the same as the one that was established by the COG, or it can be different. But if it's different, then the municipality has to provide a written explanation to the COG specifying the reasons for the difference. We don't take any action on that. It's just an explanation that comes to us. There are a series of things that you are required to consider in the municipal housing growth plan. So it has to be consistent with municipal, regional, and state POCDs, as well as relevant plans by the local water pollution control authority. It has to identify specific zones or parcels that can be developed to meet the affordable housing goal through the process of summary review, as well as the maximum allowed density. And it has to identify strategies that the municipality has or will adopt to improve the accessibility of affordable housing for individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. It also has to identify strategies that the municipality has or will adopt to promote the development of diverse types of housing. It has to include an inventory of developable land. It has to explain how the plan meets the requirements of 8-2B, including furthering the purpose of the Federal Fair Housing Act. It has to identify projected infrastructure needs, including wastewater capacity, to help the municipality meet their affordable housing goal. And it has to provide an implementation schedule for policies, strategies, and actions in the plan. There are review and approval and reporting requirements for this as well. So municipalities creating their own municipal housing growth plan has to submit their plan to the COGS for review 90 days before submission to OPM. We are allowed to provide comment and suggest amendments for that. Then the municipality has to submit to OPM for approval by the deadline, file with the town clerk, and post on the website, as well as adopt and implement the housing growth policies that are set out in the plan. They also have to submit an annual progress report to OPM, which will be used to demonstrate progress on the condition as a condition of award for the housing growth program funds, which are expected to be available in 2028. The regional housing growth plans will be a much shorter review. So Section 6 has the requirements for the regional housing growth plans. Each COG has to create one by the initial deadline in every 5 years. So municipal and regional, same timeline. The COGs have to include all of the same elements as for the municipal housing growth plan. So everything that we just went over also has to be in the regional plan for each municipality that has elected to opt in. So every municipality that opts into the regional plan will have their own section that covers all of the requirements that are in the municipal housing growth plans as well. In addition, there is one extra requirement for the regional housing growth plan. It must include the housing growth policies that each municipality has or will adopt to reduce regulatory barriers and promote the development of housing. Each municipality that opts into the regional plan does have to adopt and implement the housing growth policies in the plan and still is on the hook for submitting that annual progress report to OPM. The adoption process for the municipal housing growth plan isn't spelled out in the text, but for the regional housing growth plan, it has to be adopted by the COG board and also by each municipality via the CEO and also the Planning Commission or Planning and Zoning Commission if they're combined. There are several studies and tools and guidelines that we're expecting to see that will help in this process. So our initial guidance from OPM is expected to be out March 1st, 2026. That is the deadline in the text. However, we know that there will probably be subsequent guidelines issued because it's a lot to take in. So we think the March 1st is probably going to be just an initial set of guidance to get us going. OPM with the GIS office is also going to create developable land tools that we can use in the developable land analysis. That's in section 7. The deadline for that is July 1st, 2026. And then OPM, DOH, and DEEP are conducting a wastewater capacity study that's in section 33, and that is expected July 1st, 2026 as well. So what is next with all this information? What are we going to do? The COGS are going to be working collectively with OPM on the state methodology. That's our first task. RiverCog is specifically also going to be starting our outreach to all of the municipalities in the next month. The purpose of this initial outreach, at least, is to provide an orientation, basically what we've gone over just now. What is it that we're looking at doing? We're going to establish a partnership, making sure that each municipality is aware that it's not RiverCog making this thing and giving it to you. It's us working together to create it in partnership and to answer any early questions that we are capable of answering. As Eliza said, we were expecting more new people on this call because I think most of you here already know this, but the Regional Housing Committee is the steering committee for the Housing Growth Plan work. As the successor document to the 830J plans and the Regional Housing Plan. That's in your bylaws as a task. We do also plan on tapping the Regional Economic Development Committee for assistance in areas, particularly as it relates to employment, when we're starting that level of analysis. So having these joint meetings, I think, is going to be really useful as we move forward. We are going to rely on you, our representatives, to convey the information that we talk about here to your municipality. We are going to be providing materials so that we're all saying the same thing, and we're also going to make ourselves available to assist you, but we also recognize that sometimes it is better for you to be the messenger than for us. So we'll work together with all of you to figure out the best approach for that in each town as we move forward. And then we will also rely on you to convey information from your municipalities to this group. You are on commissions and committees, you are staff, you are in the weeds on all of this. So we are going to be counting on you to bring all of that information, everything that you're talking about in your towns, back to us so we can incorporate it into the effort. And if you all remember from our last regional housing needs assessment process, we will be assigning homework so that we are all operating in our upcoming conversations with a baseline understanding. And your first task, in case you have forgotten what is in it, is to read or reread the regional housing plan, which we will be sending out, because that's going to be our starting point. I do have bonus content, but I want to make sure that we can wrap up everything else that we have to talk about today before we go into that. I have the rest of the stuff that's in the act that we talked about at the RPC last night. So if there's time and interest, we can come back to some of that. But for now, I want to, if I can, stop share and answer any questions or see if I've overwhelmed anyone.
If you have a question, please use the raise hand feature or raise your hand if your camera's on and I can call on you. And I just want to say that I also did put the link to the regional housing plan in the chat, and we'll send that out as well. No questions?
I got a question. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. As far as drafting and developing the regional housing growth plan, how much participation do you anticipate the municipalities or members of the municipalities in that planning process?
So I think it's going to be very similar to how we did the regional housing plan with the annexes. So each town that participated had their own annex where we worked with the town staff and the planning and zoning commissions and getting feedback and kind of crafting that. I think it's going to be, we're not quite there yet, but I think it's going to be a standard format that we use across municipalities, but the content in that format is going to be highly dependent on the conversations that we're having with the commissions. I would like to see more engagement than we had last go around rather than less.
Eric?
For the municipality outreach that you're going to be doing next month, are you going to be reaching out to the planning and zoning commissions and ZAOs or to executive boards or some combination of the two?
Combination, and I think we would, Eliza, if you had a plan on who specifically you wanted to chat with, we've already been asked by Old Saybrook to come, and it's going to be a joint meeting that we're going to talk, we're going to speak at. So I think it's just going to depend on the municipality and what you think would work best.
Yeah, and I think probably when we do initial outreach, it will be to the CEO and the planner. Because in some towns we do know the chairperson of the P or Z or P and Z, but in some towns we don't. So I think it would be best to start there. Jennifer?
Just a quick question on the timeline. So does the 10 years begin on the July 28 date when we create our first housing growth plan for the municipality? And can we count when do we start counting new projects? Would those under construction currently be counted?
So this was a question that came up in our initial conversations with OPM. And I think I think the way that we're thinking about it is when we start working on the goal setting, we're going to be using data from a particular point in time. It's going to be whatever the most recent data available is. So anything built or in the works between that date of the data and the end of the planning period would theoretically count. Because you either want the units captured on the need side or the existing side. It would be one or the other.
Yeah, just quick question for Megan is your bonus materials, are you going to go into the development of an inventory of developable land?
I can talk to the developable land inventory.
Thank you.
Yeah, wait, hang on. Sorry, I just messed up my screen. I got 2 screen extenders as a Christmas gift, which has been a blessing and a curse. So hang on one second as I pull up the definition. And we are, as I'm looking for this, we're going to be looking towards the tools that are going to be coming out through GIO, but they are just going to be tools that we can use. We're going to be relying a lot on our GIS staff and whatever consultant team we pull together to assist us in doing the developable land analysis. There are also 2 places where developable land comes up, and there is not unanimous agreement yet among the COGs as to what that means. So when we're goal setting the developable land inclusion, it says, consider the availability of developable land. In the actual plan, you have to have an inventory of developable land. To my mind, an inventory is far more precise and parcel-based than an assessment of. Ben, I see your hand. Were you gonna contribute to that understanding?
Yeah, I can't provide legal analysis, and I want to just thank everyone on the call for their patience as OPM, DOH, where it's appropriate, are coordinating to help get guidance out on this stuff. The stuff that's come out in such a short term has been really impressive. So kudos to all of you for doing that. I just wanted to mention that on the developable land component, there and just clarify something that OPM brought up is that the state will not be identifying the developable land within your specific communities, but will be providing those GIS tools that Megan mentioned to help communities identify those parcels. And then I just want to put a plug in that two separate communities, actually kind of three communities in the River Cog region has received technical assistance grants. And as part of their scope of work are actually considering this. I was on a call or last week with Daniel from Deep River doing some of this analysis, and I kind of just made a plug for Government in New York to be part of the conversation if they end up coming up as a consultant. Obviously, they've done some work in the region, whatever, that's neither here nor there. But they're looking at trying to identify these sorts of things, and I think it's a great opportunity for the region to lean on to lessons learned from those two programs. But ultimately, you'll all be responsible for identifying zones, parcels. I think the language, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, has both developable zones or parcels, priority zones, and individual parcels. So I know in some places there was some hesitation to say this is the exact spot that we want to do what we want to do. This is a sort of generalized area on it. But again, the guidance for specifically what would satisfy OPM's review, I think some of that is coming on down the line and will be out probably further out because they have a lot of other things to do first, and those plans aren't due for a bit. So just wanted to make mention of that and answer questions if anyone has on.
Thanks, Ben. So I did put the definition for developable land. It's found in section 4. I put it in the chat because it's quite long, but it's land, including any land owned by state or political subdivision of the state, including a municipality that as of January 1st, 2026 can be feasibly developed or redeveloped into residential development or mixed use development. Provided the feasibility of such development or redevelopment is based on commercially reasonable assumptions. It does not include land already committed to a public use or purpose, whether publicly or privately owned. Open space, parks, and recreation areas that are dedicated to the public or subject to a recorded conservation easement. Land that is subject to an enforceable restriction or prohibition of development, provided any such restriction or prohibition is not imposed by any zoning regulation or ordinance adopted by the municipality. Wetlands or watercourses and areas of 1/2 or more acres of contiguous land that are unsuitable due to topographic features such as steep slopes. So it's fairly broad. It's kind of what we might expect. It's development and redevelopment of parcels. We are kind of seeing the initial stage of, considering the availability of developable land as kind of a higher level analysis. And then when we get into the actual housing growth plans, that would be where we would get into working with the municipalities on sort of a ground truthing of the information and putting together that inventory of parcel specific or zone specific analysis. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, I would have agreed with you, your first comments, that I think inventory is something very specific. And it does say July 1st, and it says by municipality and by region. And so this is a very light touch on that concept. And we are looking at state law. So
yeah, so
it'd be good to have really firm commitments from the state housing authority. They're not expecting an actual inventory.
Eric?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering so it says topographic features there. I think a lot of people know that Killingworth has soil-based zoning, or if you don't, we have soil-based zoning. How the heck does that play into things like the suitability of soils for septic in areas where there is no sewer or, sewer?
Yeah.
I mean, the other aspect is kind of covered in there. We have so much ledge that you can throw a rock and you'll hit ledge. Um, but I'm just kind of thinking about what would qualify as developable land. And then kind of the flip side of that, if a parcel is already has housing built on it, so like single family home, is that considered developable land just by virtue of the fact that there's already a house there? You could probably fit more in there if you had the proper infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that last bit. So it includes development and redevelopment potential. And from our understanding, the progress that OPM is going to be looking for in demonstrating that you are working towards your plan goals is what's in the municipality's control. So that's, applying for grant programs to improve infrastructure. It's changing your zoning on parcels to allow greater density, even if it's already built, if it were redeveloped, it would have this many more units, that sort of a thing. And one of the things that has to be included in your plan is areas where improved infrastructure could help with meeting the housing goal. So I don't think it's so much of a gotcha, you got to hit your target numbers as much as it is think through what you can do and where you could put it. And I think so long as we're all making a good faith effort towards that, that's going to be good.
Anybody else have other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to talk about is how RiverCog can help you. And I'm just going to quickly tell you two things that we've come up with so far. A bunch of you have heard this already, and those of you that are CEOs are going to hear this again on Thursday, sorry. But one of the things that we are doing is we have an RFP out now, which is due back soon on February 2nd for a zoning consultant to help our municipalities change some of those zoning regulations that need to be done by July. So that is going to be a pretty fast ask. So we're going to get as much of that done as we can. We're hoping at the bare minimum for like regulation templates that towns can use. And then if we need to do more work after that July 1 deadline, we will keep going with that. And then the second thing is some of you may have heard that you, after July 1st, can no longer reject housing development of 16 or 15 and under based solely on parking requirements. And you are able to create these, what they're calling conservation and traffic mitigation districts in your town where you can regulate parking. So we will be helping towns that would like to do that with that exercise as well. Megan, what did I forget?
I think you caught them. I do have slides on both of those provisions, and also John was our presenter on parking at CCAPA if he wants to speak to it as well. If there are questions or you want more information and you're willing to hang out with us a little bit longer.
I see Eric has a question.
It's less a question and more a comment to Department of Housing and DOT. I brought it up, I think, with Sam or at RiverCog last month or month before. For those of us who have main streets and our apartments that lie on main or let me rephrase that, on state roads, how does that parking enforcement work when there's no parking on the state road anyways? That's kind of a thought question, hand grenade lobbed
John.
into the middle of everything.
I don't think it matters that much. I mean, the statute is the statute. And enforcement of on-street parking is the authority of whoever owns the road. So if it's a local road, the town controls it, and it really it's up to the local parking of their traffic authority how that gets regulated. In the case of state roads, it's up to the DOT how they want to regulate their own parking. That's really a separate consideration from the parking regulation in the statute.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, there's nothing in the statute that compels any municipality, the state, or private parking lot owner to make their streets or parking available for private developers to use. Those agreements would have to happen between the developer and the town, or the developer and the private lot owner, to accommodate the parking from the development. So that would you would think would come out in a parking study that the developer might do. If they're more than 16 units, they may do that if they don't want to provide the minimum parking. But otherwise, if a town doesn't allow on-street parking on their town roads, there may be no parking. But you can't. But at the same time, you can't deny approval just because there's no parking.
Anyone, other questions? Chris?
A question or concern, and there may be an answer, but I just want to put it out there. So when properties are identified, land is identified, currently assessed at vacant land value, and I believe it could be possibly assessed at highest and best use. I'm not sure of the state statute on that, but I'm just worried that once these properties are identified, it may be another tool to assess these properties higher. And I know the farms are going through all this right now, but I just want to throw a little caution out there to make sure that that can't happen.
Someone
just a comment. That's all.
Yeah, I mean yeah. Okay. I don't know what to say to that. If anybody else, Megan, Sam, John.
No, that's right. Just a comment.
Okay.
I just wanted to put it out there.
Thank you. Questions, comments, anyone else? Merrick?
I just want to say, you asked earlier, what we can do, what you guys at RiverCog can do to help us. I guess to just continue to be a point of contact for us, keep us up to date on anything new and changing. If there's guidance from the state, please pass that information along. If in the next legislative session, if something's proposed that impacts this, just keep us all in the loop.
Absolutely. We fully intend to do that as your regional housing committee.
Friendly neighborhood RiverCog.
Yeah. Bonnie?
Yeah, I just was wondering, as I was listening to Megan, the definition is state or municipally owned land, not any land. And so I think there's a distinction. It has to be for our inventory. Am I wrong about that? Or is it all private land too? Because that's not the definition. What's that?
Yeah, it's including state land or municipal land. So it's any land including state land or municipal.
Because I was looking at your chat. In the chat, it didn't seem to suggest that. Let's see. What does it say? It says
means land including any land owned by.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Okay, so that is harder to manage. Okay, I was hoping it was just state or look. Although I think clearly the idea is to identify others that could with more infrastructure or whatever could, but to identify that all land as developable, that could be challenging. Okay.
Well, and keeping in mind too that it could just be upzoning. You could say this area is developable. It's currently developed, but currently it only allows, 2 dwelling units per acre, and we're going to upzone it. And now it's 10 dwelling units per acre or something to that effect. And that's where it says parcels and zones as well.
I will also add, that there is another town that's on this call right now. I won't necessarily call them out, but they're working on their POCD, and Goldman and York did a developable land inventory for them that I saw presented at a pretty largely attended town meeting, and they did just that. They said, like, even here's a parcel with a single family home. You could add an ADU, you could add 2 more units based on the size. And everybody there was like, okay, cool. And like there was like no comment on it, which I thought was interesting. But it is, there are towns that do have this already, and it is currently being done. I see Daniel next, and then Sam.
Yeah, so my question is about that upzoning. I'm just looking for a little clarity. We're obviously going through that exercise as overall technical assistance with Goldman New York, and we're going to have, well, we don't have a lot of building opportunities with the state forest, and that's the same up in Chester. It takes up more than half of our map. But are we going to be required to do the upzoning, or is there? I mean, how is that just going to work? I don't want to throw any conclusions on there yet.
So whatever policies and goals and strategies each municipality chooses to use is going to be up to them. And, we'll work with you in your individual circumstances to figure out what works best. So upzoning is just one of, several different options that you could think about in accommodating your number of housing units. If you put it as a goal, then the expectation would be that you would then proceed to adopt the new zoning regulations to upzone the properties. And that would be part of your progress report to show that you are making progress towards the implementation of your plan.
So as of now, except for when it's associated with meeting a growth, right? Mm-hmm. We have no requirement to upzone all the R30s and R60s.
Well, there is the transit community middle housing requirement.
No, that's why I'm asking. It gets kind of muddy. I just want to understand. I just want to understand, Megan.
Don't we all? I can pull up that slide if we need to on the transit community middle housing, because there is going to be a degree of upzoning anyways now. Yes, which could, if you think about it, that could in fact count towards how you are accommodating some of these new housing units without even having to try new things. Although I still recommend trying new things.
Before I get over to Sam and then Bailey, I just want to interject as your nerdy timekeeper that we have about 11 minutes left in this meeting, and we still have to do officer elections for Housing Committee. Go ahead, Sam.
Just a couple of things. First, the developable land, and I just want to restate, is important for the regional allocations. Understanding where we can expect housing growth is going to be somewhat dependent on where there's developable land. Every town does have developable land, but some towns are more constrained than others. Particularly by some towns have large amounts of state-owned state forests, or water company land, or other impediments. The question about there was a question in the chat about land trusts. I know if the development rights, I'm pretty sure land trust land is not included in the developable land inventory, but but I would strongly recommend that your land trust investigate retiring your development rights just as a good practice. And that's a Margot Burns question with the Lower Connect River Land Trust. So I just want to address that. And the last thing I wanted to address is I don't expect that there'll be any big housing bill in this short session of the General Assembly, but I know that CCAPA, which John Guskowski is leading legislatively, and the COG directors through the Connecticut Association of COGs, we will be coming up with some small fixes, and hopefully legislators will, someone will take that up and make some small fixes to the bill. I don't expect any big changes happening to the bill, but maybe some clarifications, like, for example, clarifying what happens when you have 16 housing units for parking, or or there's a few other areas where the language should be clarified to make it easier to implement. So.
Yes, Sam. Go ahead, Bailey.
Hi. So my question is about the land trust properties, because we have a lot of preserved and fee-owned properties for our land trust in town. So those fee-owned properties quite often are not deed restriction, but deed restricted at all. So they're just like they were donated to the land trust, and they might have had some intent that the person that donated it gave, but they did not put a legal restriction on it of any sort. So those fee-owned properties that do not have any legal restrictions, those could be considered for development, correct?
I mean, it might fall. I can't answer for certain, but in my interpretation, I'm reading section A, land already committed to a public use or purpose, whether publicly or privately owned. That particular subsection doesn't have a requirement for an easement or a restriction, anything recorded on it. So I could see it falling under that because they do have easement in subsection B, and they have enforceable restriction in subsection C. So I kind of see A as a bit of a catch-all.
And I would argue that the land trust, being a nonprofit, providing a public good, would fall into that category.
I would probably consider, if it were me doing the analysis and as of my current understanding, I would consider it land trust land committed to a public use or purpose.
So that would not qualify it.
Right. That would be excluded from the developable land.
Okay. And the same thing would go for, let's say, a town park. That town park may not have a deed restriction on it, but it is municipally owned land. I don't think this analysis requires you to consider developing a town park that's used for a public purpose.
But things that are owned by the town and do not have any purpose yet could be considered.
Yes.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say the town owns some lands. It got the land through foreclosure, or they came to own some land that is not otherwise being used as a public park or for some public purpose. I would say that under this language, you would be required to include it in your your developable land analysis.
Yeah, keeping in mind that, if you're writing your plan or RiverCog is writing the plan, and we're required to inventory the developable land. And presumably when we're creating the inventory, we're going to be working with the municipality to ground truth the parcels. We did something really similar, Kevin and I, when we were working on the SEDS, going through parcel by parcel and saying, what is this? What is it used for? Does it fit? From a planning perspective, if the town owns land that makes sense to be open space or public use, it's not going to be a space that we're saying, yes, upzone that for 20 units per acre. That's not something that we would be, looking to do. It would be a description in the inventory saying this is owned by the town. It is open. Technically, it might be considered developable. However, the intent of the town is to do X, Y, and Z with this land, and then move on.
And also, I don't think the intent of the statute is to compel landowners to develop their land. I think it's to identify where the opportunities, the reasonable opportunities for development are, and then focus in the plans identifying those parcels as opportunity areas for development of housing. Could a land trust sell its land for development? They may get in trouble with the IRS, but they could potentially do it. But I don't think that's the intent here. The intent here is to look at what is reasonably developable, and both from is the land developable based on land constraints, but also ownership constraints.
Michael?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I figured out all the meats again. Question again on developable land. Is accessibility seen as a factor? I don't see it in the statute, and I haven't heard it in the discussions, but we have firsthand experience of some property that looked like it was feasible for housing, but it would have required a long road to be cut to it through private property and all the complications and expense that come with that, and that essentially destroyed any possibility of the project being financially feasible. So do you envision that being a consideration, or should we add that in? So I'll leave that as an open question.
I think it's important to document these things, right? Because otherwise all of these parcels are going to keep coming up. I know there are several municipalities that have had this issue where people see a piece of land and say, well, why isn't that developed? And there are, a million reasons as to why it's not been developed. And a lot of them come down to feasibility, especially financial feasibility. And so I think documenting that process, maybe you do identify it. You say this piece came up. However, here are the constraints, and here's why this would not be feasible. And I think that's acceptable. I would also go back to the provision that says identify areas where additional infrastructure would allow the development of land and meeting your goals. And so I think flagging that would also be important, saying if we had these things, this might be feasible.
Yeah, I could imagine an index of parcels that these parcels could be developable, but these other issues need to be addressed. And you could actually create a table of those parcels. Like I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a brownfield parcel, which you want to redevelop, but can't be redeveloped for housing until it's remediated to a certain standard. You do want to show it as a possibility, but you also want to document these are the impediments. And of course, I think with your example with a landlocked parcel that requires an easement from neighbors, if those neighbors don't give the easement unless the town uses eminent domain, that's it. You're not developing that parcel.
In the interest of time, Merrick, I see your hand.
Oh, we can talk about it later. It's fine.
No, if it's a good question for everybody, go for
No
it.
pressure.
It's more of an ask. With respect to the developable land, maybe a resource Rivercog could provide us is like two lists, things to include in the analysis, things to exclude. And you can make it specific or broad wherever you think. So as we do our analysis, we can have kind of a guide on what to be considering.
A great idea.
For sure. Okay, thank you. I'm just writing this down. So in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving on the agenda, and we're going to move forward with some regional housing committee upkeep things that we need to do. So everyone here is absolutely welcome to stay. This shouldn't take long, but if you don't want to stay, I totally understand. Regional housing committee people, please stay. For those of you that are leaving, thank you. And anybody that is here, if you have any further questions about this, please let me or Megan know. We'd be happy to answer. And there's going to be more information forthcoming in the weeks and months
and years
as we move forward. Yeah. So stay tuned to keep hearing from us. And once we have that municipal guide available, we'll send that out. I'm also going to send out a reminder to read the regional housing plan with a link, our old regional housing plan. And also these slides will be sent out to everyone. So thank you so much. Our chairperson, Pat, has joined us. She's sitting in Susie Beckman's office with her at Rivercog. But I am going to hold on to the meeting because we're going to talk about election of officers in a second. But before we do election of officers, I'd like to do approval of the December 16th, 2025 minutes from the Regional Housing Committee. If I could hear a motion and a second on that, I'd appreciate it.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Who seconded? Was that Daniel?
Yeah, second. Yeah.
Sorry, trying to write at the same time. Okay, ayes for approving the minutes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, anybody a nay? Speak up. Okay, motion approved. And then the second thing we're going to do is election of officers. So we have 3 officer positions. We have chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary. And I do have a nomination for chairperson and a nomination for vice chairperson. But before I go through with those, I would like to take nominations from the floor, and you can nominate yourself for any of those 3 positions. Speak up, right up.
What does secretary entail exactly?
Not too much. So basically, if the chairperson and the vice chairperson were not there, you could run the meeting for us.
You need 2 people to drop away to have
yes.
a head task.
But it's not responsible for taking minutes.
No, but you absolutely could. If you wanted to. But no, Megan and I strive really hard to make this like a no work position for our officers. Unless you want to get involved, then absolutely.
Well, yeah, I did receive the email that was sent, and I appreciate the consideration. I'm involved in a few other committees right now, all going in the same directions. But I'll put my name up for secretary if nobody else wants it.
Thank you. Okay, before I move on to the election, do we have any other nominations from the floor? Let me move to page 2 of my Zoom. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to move forward, or I'm going to put forth the slate of officers if somebody would like to move and second. So right now we have for chairperson, Pat Bands, for vice chairperson, Merrick Kozakowski, and for secretary, Daniel Smith. Anybody want to make a motion on that?
Yeah, I'll move up.
Abby, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second. I'll second.
Okay. Who's that, Eric? Okay. Okay, everybody in favor of those 3 people being in those 3 positions?
Aye.
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 Anybody not in favor, please speak up. All right. Motion approved. Congratulations.
We've moved up in the world. We have 3.
Yeah, this is great. You know, and moving forward, I think it just lends more credibility that we could fill our slate as we work on the the steering committee and things that we're doing moving forward. So I appreciate this from all of you. And as you know,
I will say, Eliza and Megan do make it easy, and we appreciate that you guys are such a support to us. So thank you.
Pat, for leading us for a while now. And you know, with that said, if there's ever anything anybody wants to see on the agenda or wants the housing committee to talk about, you can always be in touch. We'd be happy to do so. Okay. And lastly, I just wanted to quickly talk about the survey that I sent out about meeting times and dates. It looked like everybody was pretty happy with keeping the meeting to 1 hour loose rule, and the majority, like 70% of people, said to keep the meeting date and time the same. So I think that's what we're going to do for now. And we can revisit it another time if we need to. Does anyone have any questions on any of that?
Question, are we going to keep the meetings virtual or hybrid or in person?
We were thinking to keep them virtual because the times when we have done the in-person meetings, we haven't had a great showing lately.
Yeah, I baked cookies for like 30 people and 2 people showed.
2 years in a row.
2 years in a
very
row.
hungry people.
Um,
Understood. That's fine.
I mean, with that said, in-person meetings are great. We can absolutely talk about that more if anybody has strong feelings.
Or quarterly, we had been planning quarterly in-person meetings if that's a middle ground. We can save our big stuff for when we're all together.
Yeah, and I purposely didn't ask that on the poll because I asked it the year before and everybody was like, yeah, I would totally come if they were in person. And then it didn't always happen.
My only comment is that when we were doing the needs assessment, it was really helpful to have all, having a working group where we had all these things on the walls. And I think when we get to that stage, I think that would be an important one for everyone to be present and add their input. I think it'd be harder to achieve that on a Zoom, but maybe you can do it, Megan. Liza, you've always done many amazing things, but I felt that was a really helpful meeting, and I think it was we had a lot of good input. That would be my only caveat.
Yeah, and I think I speak for all of the staff when I say that we agree for sure that that was something that we needed to do in person. And I think moving forward, should we have any workshopping or any kind of stuff like that, that would be beneficial.
I thrive with a whiteboard.
We'll look at the agenda and decide if that's something that would be more conducive to do it in person. And then just let people know ahead of time, not like a day or two before, so they can plan for that.
Sure. Sounds good. I just flipped off my thing by accident. Let me find it. Okay. So now we're on other, if anybody has any other.
I have you mentioned that I saw this Friday that CCM and Cost are hosting a session on the House Bills 8002, and Megan, you're one of the speakers or presenters, right?
Sure am.
So, all right, you might have mentioned that before I joined, but
no, we hadn't yet. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, we've asked. So you should be receiving an email from Vicki Harris, our office manager, with the information for that. So I asked her to forward that out to all of you this morning. So you should receive it. You should receive it today in your email.
all right. Just so you know, I tried there is a register button. I tried it, but it didn't let me register.
Yeah, we were having the same trouble.
It got fixed.
Oh, did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll get that email from Vicki because I know she doesn't have some of your email addresses because she doesn't normally send things to Housing Committee. So I will forward that as well.
And let's see. I'm going to try to put it in the chat as well. So let me see if I can do that right now.
And I think we were talking this morning, this is also open to P&Z commissioners, not just CEOs. And then I'll wait a minute for Sam to put that in the chat, but I'll also send that out in an email. Does anybody have anything else?
That's Thursday, correct?
Friday.
Friday. All right.
I think it's 9 a.m. to 10:30 Friday.
Oh, thanks, Pat.
Yeah, so it's just should have showed up in your chat, and let's try the register link to see if it works.
Yep.
It does. All right, so please register for the event, and hopefully you can attend.
Okay. Anybody else?
And and so under the registration, you'll see $0 for members. Since all of you are representing member towns to CCM, I would argue that you are a member rate. So you're all so some of you are the CEOs like Eric or Mike, but others you're representing the towns in this capacity on our regional housing committee. So, or you're a commissioner. So I would assume that this is meant for you. So I would not pay the $120 registration.
All right. And with that, if I see nobody else giving me an other topic, which I don't, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 3:11.
So moved. Second.
Okay, cool. We are adjourned.
Thank
you,
you.
everybody.
11 minutes
Bye-bye.
past an hour.
Yes, this is good for
All right,
us.
we'll work on that.
Cheers, there.
See you next
Good
time.
job.
Stay safe.